It's the Sustainable Ministry Show, episode number 5, Every Time a Bell Rings, part 2. Like for me, that's a real practical piece to that. But what do you guys do to help kind of prepare and set that day aside?
Mm.
Brent?
I mean, you don't have to speak. You really don't have to answer the question.
Yeah, no. I hear you say when you start talking about washing dishes, it makes me think of, it was Brother Lawrence who talked about doing dishes was an act of prayer for him, and in the monastery, the work that these guys were doing in the monastery is an act of prayer, offering themselves in conversational ways with God, which sounds kind of to try to make everything holy, which makes me sound like a holier than thou guy. But I think that's the goal, right? Is that all things be seen as holy. And so for you, it's dishwashing is sort of a task that's not Sabbath at all. Brother Lawrence, it was something he longed to do. It drew him into conversation with God, right? So I guess one of the takeaways is that it would be presumptuous of us to prescribe, here's things you should or should not do on the Sabbath. I think that got folks in trouble with Jesus as well. But I think about my own practice of Sabbath. Friday is my day off, and it's also the day that I spend with my 11-month-old baby. Now, I don't love doing diapers, and I don't love having to make sure he doesn't climb up the steps because we don't have one of those really cool guards that would keep him from doing so. But when my mind is right and when my spirit is right, which isn't always the case, there's something in the bigger picture about babies that you look into the face of a child who is completely helpless without me changing his diaper, without me feeding him, without me protecting him. And there are moments, rare as they may be, where in the throes of childcare, just on my own with my baby, this reality that I am not too much unlike that little kid, right? He tries to do things that he's learning to do and wants to do more than he's really capable of doing, and oh, that sounds a lot like me. And so it's sort of a reminder sometimes when I'm with him, as much as I may be annoyed that I could be working on a sermon, or I could be taking a prayer walk, or I could be visiting the principal at the school where I'm launching, that this kid is somehow impeding that opportunity. On rare occasion, I'll find myself sitting there going, I wonder if God feels the same way with me, that God desired for me just to sit here and need to be in God's midst, need to be helped by God, need to just do nothing and be cared for. Anyway. Yeah.
Melissa?
It's funny you ask. Sunday, I try to do Sabbath on Sundays, and I know we go to church, but after church, I veg. I do nothing. I typically sit on my bed and I read. And so I am not nearly as conscious of the work that we do, such as cleaning dishes, or I know Nate making dinner. I know you're very intentional. Your family doesn't make dinner, right? You bring in or something?
Yeah, it's always pretty light on Sunday evening.
Right. So we're not that conscious of that, but I am, especially very, very recently. I've just been trying to just chill, and wrestle with being obedient to just unplugging and sitting back and doing things that fuel myself. And sometimes just being by myself is awesome.
Mm.
Yeah, when I talk to people about Sabbath and like what it concretely looks like, I'll often look to the Israelites in the wilderness in Exodus 16, or the Pharisees, and it seems to me like the invitation to both of them for the Israelites to not gather manna on the seventh day, and to the Pharisees to chill out a little bit about the law, is in both cases the invitation is to put down something on which it appears their lives depend. It looks like the lives of the Israelites depend on the manna. It looks like the lives of the Pharisees depend on the law. And the invitation of the Sabbath is to actually put that down, so that we recognize what our lives are actually dependent on, which is God's life and grace. So, for as long as I was a student, schoolwork was the thing I put down as a way of, receiving Sabbath. And I did that because there was temptation to say, no, my life depends on that. I have to do that or else. And it was the way of saying, well, in some sense, yes, my life does depend on it. But ultimately, I don't want my life to depend on that. And my identity has to be caught up in something bigger than student. And so now it has to be caught up in something bigger than director of the farminary or consultant or anything else. So to put those things down so that we can receive this this grace of recognizing ourselves as children of God seems like a great challenge and a huge gift.
Mm.
So before we close up, then, for the for folks at the churches that that might just say, like, I just don't have time to do that. I don't know where I can plug that into my schedule. What's the response? What should we be saying to folks that feel like, I just can't find the time to take 24 hours off or to set a day aside? Where should somebody start?
Well, we could give the Sunday school answer. The ministry architect's answer would be create a rhythmic week and assign your day into components where you tell it what to do instead of finding out later where it went. That sounds very Dave Ramsey-esque as well, but I would say just look at your next week and pick a day and just try it. And maybe you try 12 hours at a time, because it's one of those things. Sabbath is one of those things that it feels like just one more thing being added to the calendar until you taste and see that it's good. And then you start longing for it. And so 12 hours becomes a 24-hour.
Yeah, and I also think, to be, a downer to Brent's upper, to be prepared for it to feel like death, and to trust that might be the most important thing you can endure is that anxiety and that disorientation, because it's leading you to a place where you may actually start longing for it. And I'm with Brent, find an hour, find 4 hours to name the thing. I think the first step is name the thing. What is that thing that tempts you to believe your life depends on it? Name it. And then try to, go for an hour without it. Maybe it's your cell phone. I don't know. Maybe it's I had somebody who basically said the thing that they actually were tempted to believe that their life depended on anxiety. And so they tried to set anxiety aside for an hour, for 2 hours. And it was completely liberating for them. So it may not even be like a tangible thing. It might be an emotion. It might be, a view of yourself that isn't faithful. Put that thing down, and you might be surprised how life can continue in spite of it.
And this might be a little scandalous, but I would suggest maybe it's time for us to kind of sit back and evaluate what is it? What is the thing about our overscheduled lives that are so important to us, or how are we so important to it? And really have that open and honest conversation and the recognition that we're just not that important. Maybe we need to just own that and figure out what is it that is preventing me from being alone and being in rest, rest in God, etc. What's preventing that? Is it me? Because I think most of the times it is. It's my fear. It's my fear of not getting something done. It's my fear that somebody is dependent upon my ability to do something or perform in some way. And it's really that thing is what's getting in my way of communing with God the way God would have me commune, with him. And so sometimes I just think we need to step back and say, what is it? What is it preventing us from doing it? Because really at the end of the day, we're just not that important.
It reminds me of one of my first years in ministry, and I forget what I was leaving for, but I had to leave and kind of prepare our regular youth program to function without me that first night. It was before I was doing any work with Ministry Architects. And that took so much work and energy. And I was a little upset because when I came back, I heard how great the night was from the volunteers. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. And I thought in that, like, how could it have been so good? I wasn't even there. Like, how could, like, really just that arrogant kind of like youth ministry. They needed me, like they needed me attitude. And the realization that they didn't need me now has really stuck with me even when I think about Sabbath. Like all these things that are on my schedule, all these things on my calendar, if I'm not involved in them, they're gonna happen. And some of those are going to be really good. And so the freedom to say, like, my church, I'm involved in it. I'm a leader there, but it can function without me. Is not such a bad thing when we realize that there's some real freedom in that, to be who we are and be in God's presence and not have to worry about the things that we think need us. So on the note of you're not that important, we probably need to close this up. So where can people keep up with you guys?
I'll go. You can email me at melissa@ministryarchitects.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, Melissa Rao. And I think I'm headed to Dallas tomorrow. I'll be leading a visioning retreat for St. Michael and All Angels Episcopal Church. That's what's coming up.
Very nice. Brent?
Well, I could just do this and see if that helped. A note. But pretty much you can find me however you like. Most people find each other on Facebook. Some people find each other on Twitter, Instagram. But to be honest, I wouldn't call me. I would call Nate. I think Nate is the master. And so if Nate could give all of his information, that would be extremely helpful.
Because if I just talk to enough people, then I'll be good enough.
Target people like me.
No, the easiest way to find me is probably to just Google Farminary. I think we're the only one. And that will lead to my information. And you can email. It's actually not on this. My one email address is on here. If I keep talking, then I'm big on the screen, right? Anyway, yes. So Google Farminary, and if you email farminary@ptsem.edu, that shows up in my inbox. That's all I got.
Excellent.
Call Melissa, don't call me.
and Melissa is everywhere. You can find her in all places, on all things.
She'll be coming to a city near you.
That's great. And I'm Bryant. Feel free to email me at bryant@ministryarchitects.com. And if you have questions, thoughts, you can tweet us at MIN Architects. So Men Architects. And keep up with us there. If you have questions about Sabbath, reach out to Nate. You've got all his numbers and his email address and his Google search. And then Brent has some really good ideas about taking Sabbath retreats, so he would be one to follow up with there too. Thanks so much, you guys.
Ha ha ha!